Columbus, Georgia. This is your City Council. Mayor Teresa Tomlinson. City Manager Isaiah Hughley. Pops Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Evelyn Turner Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem and District 4. Mike Baker, District 5. Gary Allen, District 6. Mimi Woodson, District 7. Walker Garrett, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large Counselor. Skip Henderson, Post 10 at-large Counselor. Tony Washington, Clerk of Council. And City Attorney Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the September 12th meeting of the City Council. We have literally beat the storm, so we've come through the other side of Irma and relatively unscathed. I say that, of course, knowing that some people have had their homes significantly damaged with trees. There's certainly some trees in the street, but if you turn back the clock to what we were looking at on Saturday, we were expecting 70, 80-mile-an-hour winds and a Category 4 hurricane to come right up this way. The eye of Irma did pass over this city, and so we're so very grateful for the fact that the storm had dissipated greatly, and the whole southern part of the storm broke off and spun away from us. So we caught a lucky break, and I want to thank all of our citizens, of course, who heeded our calls to stay off the roads, to seek shelter, to keep things that could become projectiles out of their yards. It was amazing to see everybody pull together, those who welcomed our evacuee friends from Florida and Georgia. Over 700 folks came to seek shelter in Columbus, Georgia, and were met with warmth and compassion. It was an amazing thing to see, and our Parks and Rec folks, our Red Cross partners, couldn't have been more helpful. The volunteers that showed up were tremendous, and our faith community as always. I want to recognize so many people. Of course, our city manager did an incredible job. Our emergency management folks, public safety folks, out there on 9/11, the day we're supposed to be celebrating them, is the day they're out there standing in 40-mile-an-hour gusts and 28-mile-an-hour sustained winds, protecting us and our property. And so you guys are phenomenal. We're going to make it up to you. We'll have a post 9/11 celebration, but you guys are truly, truly our heroes. And for those that are too often the unsung heroes, our public works people, you all are something else. And they're out there right now making sure our roads are cleared so people can get to school and to work tomorrow. As you all know, we will resume full city services tomorrow, which will be Wednesday, the 13th, September the 13th. And school will resume. The courts will be open. It should be life back to normal. Again, I know it's going to take us a little bit of time to clean up completely. We will, tomorrow, Wednesday, have the catch-up service for garbage. So your garbage was not picked up on Monday. It will be picked up tomorrow. So please do that. Again, that's going to be Wednesday, September 13th. And then come Thursday, we'll be back to normal service. So I apologize for the long lead-in, but there's so many people to thank. Our media did an outstanding job. Thank you all for braving the elements and getting out there to get the information to our citizens so that they could be safe. And with that, we want to go ahead and start off. Mayor Pro Tem, did you want to say something off the bat? Okay, we've got Mayor Pro Tem would like to take a few words. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just want to say to Mayor, to you, thank you for all your efforts. We were notified by robocalls. We had text messages. We had email messages. We had all kind of messages. And then your message to the news media. So thanks to you, too.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. And again, the city manager, Tiasha, Brennan, in my office, I mean, there were people, they may have been at home, but they were working full bore to get all that out. And so I appreciate you saying so, and our deputy city managers as well. There's so many others. We could go on, but I think you all know how deeply we appreciate you And really, it is because of you. We didn't have any, the storm wasn't any worse. And I don't discount the fact that we had community-wide prayer on Sunday, too. Something made the bottom half of that storm peel away, and we're very grateful for it. So we thank this community for their thoughts and their prayers and for pulling together as they always do. All right, well, with that, we're going to go ahead and have a little bit of contemplation and prayer this morning. Invocation, we have Reverend Beth Schwartz who's here, who is going to provide us with the invocation consistent with her faith tradition. And if I just said Reverend, I want to apologize. Rabbi Beth Schwartz, thank you so much for being here. I blame it on
There was a
sleeplessness.
time when rabbis were called reverend in this country. There was. So I'm probably here in Columbus as well.
Good to see you.
But thank you for inviting me again. It's always an honor to be with you. It is a day of gratitude. We are grateful that we were spared the worst of the storm damage. We are also grateful for the opportunity to provide help for others, those 700 guests who came to us. It is the blessing of hospitality that calls to us on a day like today, on a week like this week, to be welcoming, to be kind, and may that continue. And I know that we are generous both to those guests and to all of the organizations that will be helping cleanup and recovery in the Southeast and still in Texas. Our thoughts go out to those who were injured and displaced by this storm, and certainly to the families of those who are lost. We are grateful that it was not worse, but any life lost, any home damaged is still a tragedy. But we sit on our blessings and we hold hands that not only are we grateful, but we pray for the strength to be who we are, to be our best selves, to call on the better angels of our nature so that we may reach out together as a community, as friends, as neighbors, as extended family. We thank you, Holy One of Blessing. We hope to continue to enjoy the blessings that you bestow on us of friendship, of cooperation, of community, that we may work to bring peace to our community, to our society, to our country, and certainly to have peace in our own hearts as we do so. Amen.
Amen, and thank you so very much for being here, and thank you for what you do for the community. You're very active, and your congregation is very active in the homeless community here, and making sure our homeless brothers and sisters find a more stable and permanent way of life. And so thank you for what you do in that as well. Of course, the schools are out of session, so we're going to have to muddle through the Pledge of Allegiance by ourselves. If you all would stand and join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Today we're going to, as you all know, we usually meet at 9 o'clock a.m., but we postponed it to give everybody a little extra time to get limbs off their driveways and trees off the street, and so everybody can have safe passage. We're going to have a truncated agenda this time around, so we've just selected a few items that are time sensitive or that we know the citizens need to hear about. And that will be the only agenda we have today. So hopefully we'll move through a little bit more quickly. But let's see, we've got Councilor Thomas who'd like to make a comment before we get started. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, I would like to ask for a point of privilege to bring the item number 3 on the city attorney's agenda up for consideration at this time.
Okay, is that?
That's a resolution.
Yes, the resolution appointing Mr. Julius Hunter Jr. to a 4-year term as full-time Chief Judge of the Recorder's Court. So, Mr. Hunter, why don't you just come forward, and Sandra's with you. Sandra, come on up. It's been too long since we've seen you. So we've got a second? Yeah.
All of us are second.
Yeah.
And Mayor, if I may, as fellow councilors, you will remember that you appointed an oversight committee for the Recorder's Court made up of Councilor Allen and Councilor Barnes and me. And we are part of a unanimous decision of that committee to present to you this afternoon this resolution for your consideration. We are recommending that the council appoint Mr. Julius H. Hunter Jr. to a 4-year term as the full-time Chief Judge of the Recorder's Court. Mr. Hunter is, as the mayor said, married to the former Sandra Lewis. They have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. Mr. Hunter graduated with a BA degree from Morehouse College and went on to the University of Tennessee School of Law. He is licensed to practice in both Georgia and Alabama and is a member of the bar associations of those 2 states. He has specialized during his legal career in juvenile law, criminal law, and family law. He has for a number of years served as a judge pro tem in our Recorder's Court, and as of January of 2017, answered the call from this council to serve as the interim chief judge for the Recorder's Court. Judge Hunter is very active in our community. He did serve 3 terms on this city council in the late 90s, early 2000s. He's a member of the Rotary Club of Columbus and other organizations, has served on the board of the Columbus Regional Hospital Authority, and it is with a great deal of pleasure that I recommend a yes vote on Julius Hunter Jr. as our mayor, as our full-time chief judge of Recorder's Court.
All right, and we have a second from the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. All right. Let's give a round.
Thank you.
Well, Judge Hunter, we're so glad to have you here and so glad that you are joining us in this important endeavor, and we'd love to hear a bit from you.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, city attorney, assistant city attorney, Mr. City Manager, assistant city managers, Madam Clerk and Madam Assistant Clerk. It's an honor to be asked to serve in the government of the city of Columbus in a judicial capacity. I love this city, and Sandra and I chose to make Columbus our home long ago. So I'm just very honored, and I'll tell you why. As Councilor Thomas indicated, I'm originally not from Columbus, Georgia. I'm from Ohio. I was born in Dayton, and except for 4 years in Boston, grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Came to Atlanta in 1970 to go to Morehouse College, and had the opportunity on the first day of school to meet a young lady who had a wonderful smile who was attending school across the street at Spelman College. I'm very shy, and I was then, but I summoned the courage to go over to her and with that beautiful smile, and I said to her, "Hello, my name is Julius Hunter. I'm from Columbus, Ohio." And she smiled at me and she says, "Well, hello, Julius Hunter. I'm Sandra Lewis. I'm from Columbus, Georgia." And we dated through school, and through the 4 years, I got a chance to date Sandra and meet her family, but I also got a chance to know Columbus and be introduced to Columbus. And so I fell in love with Sandra, and I fell in love with this city. And during that time, I thought to myself, what a wonderful city this is. What a wonderful place it would be to raise a family, never thinking that we would end up living in Columbus. Because when you're in law school and when you're about to graduate, you interview for positions that all over the country. And we were willing to go wherever fate would lead us. Fortunately, we were able to come to Columbus. I was able to secure employment here in this area. And it's the best thing that ever happened to us. In this community, we were able to raise 3 daughters, twins, and our baby, Michelle and Rochelle, and our baby Maria. They all prospered here. They received outstanding educations in the public school system here. Rochelle is an attorney, licensed in Georgia, University of Georgia law grad. Her sister Michelle, was the Newhouse Fellow at the Syracuse School of Journalism in Syracuse, and she's where she got her master's. She's on staff at the Times-Picayune newspaper in New Orleans, and our baby daughter is a graduate of University of Tennessee Law. She's licensed in Tennessee and Georgia. With each of those graduations, one thing kept going through our heads was this. These kids all got their educational base here in this community in Columbus, Georgia, and it stood them well when they left the city to go out into the world. So we are very pleased to be able to be asked to serve in this capacity, to be able to contribute in our small part, in our small way, to the betterment of Columbus, Georgia. With regard to Recorder's Court, let me say this to you. As I told the committee when I interviewed, my belief is that no matter what branch of government you serve or you work in, and no matter on what level, be it executive, legislative, or judicial, we are all servants of the people. We serve the people. They do not serve us. And so what does that mean locally? Locally, it means that the mayor serves the people. It means that city council, the legislative branch, serves the people. It means that the the local judicial section serves the people. We are here, as far as the local court system is concerned, we're here to provide due process. We're here to be a conduit of justice for all that come before the court. Not everyone is going to be happy with the decision that's rendered, but they're going to know when they leave the court that they did receive due process. And that's our goal in Recorder's Court. That's the goal in all courts. And we take that seriously at Recorder's Court, and that's going to be our aim. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this appointment, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Well, we're so very, very fortunate to have you, and thank you again for being willing to serve. Let's give Julius another round of applause.
Thank you again.
Look forward to working with you.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, we will head back to the mayor's agenda. We just have one presentation. We're getting regular updates from the tax assessor's office. Want to recognize, of course, Betty Middleton, our tax assessor, and our chief tax appraiser, I guess I should say, and deputy appraiser, and as well as Randy Lomax. So, John, it's good to have you.
Afternoon, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. City Manager, ladies and gentlemen of council. This is a short brief, as I've been requested, so maybe we'll get through this pretty quickly. Standard slide 1. Number of appeals filed as of this morning at 9 o'clock, and this hasn't changed from the last numbers, 10,642. That represents 15.3% of the notices that went out. The assessed value in dispute, which we've gone over several times, is 3.43%. I don't think anybody needs a definition of that again. 5,145 of the appeals have been reviewed. That's almost 50%, 48.35%. Of those reviewed, 3,209, or 62.37%, have been recommended as a reduction. 1,469, or just over 28% of those appeals reviewed, have been recommended for no change. 33% are being looked at by my administrative manager for a variety of different reasons. Some could be homestead exemption or any other exemption that was applied for. And then 434 have been designated for division manager review. Oftentimes those come to me. That's 8.44%. And that represents my summary presentation of the appeals. I will take your questions if
Sure.
you have any.
We've got Counselor Thomas.
Ms. Williams, when you say that 62% recommended for reduction, that does not necessarily, there's a question mark at the end of this, that does not necessarily mean that you agreed with the taxpayer's position, but that you reduced the original amount. Is that correct?
That's correct. We reduced the amount from the amount that was on their notice of assessment for 2017.
And it may or may not be what they felt was appropriate.
That's correct.
And in those cases, those are the ones that could, if the taxpayer wished, go before the Board of Tax of Equalization, right?
That's correct, or whichever path they chose
Right.
on their appeal.
I just wanted to make sure, somebody had asked me that, and just wanted to make sure that that didn't mean
We
it
agreed
went
with
back
their,
to the. right.
their value, that's right. It didn't go back to 2016 value, it's just a reduction. And then they do have the right to continue their appeal if they don't agree with that reduction.
Thank you.
We have Counselor Garrett.
Just wanted to make public the compliment I had passed along to you. I've had a lot of people complain about the process, but then I had somebody recently that had their taxes go up, and they were reduced quite significantly. They will like them lower, but who wouldn't? But they did compliment your office, and I just wanted to make that known to the public. And I've actually had some phone calls outside of that, too, that have just said that, it's a process, and they understand it has worked for them. So I just want to say thank you, Mr. Williams, for
Good.
what y'all are doing.
Thank you, I'll pass that along to my staff.
All right. Doesn't look like we have anything else. On this, John, thank you, and I'm sure we'll continue to have updates. Stick around for a minute. We're not going to go on long. I just wanted to state, I had asked for a referral of all of the prior meetings and information that had been given to council by the tax assessor's office and Tyler and so forth. And like anything, when we start looking into it, there's some great information out there. And so what I did, and we won't belabor it here today because we're trying to move on with the business we need to get to, but I've had, Lisa, do you have these booklets that, yeah. What we've done is and if the citizens would like to see this, we can put it online, send people a digital copy, but it has every single meeting that was a public meeting here that was broadcast and online, the minutes, who was attending, and what was talked about, also things like the proposal from Tyler, exactly what it said, and that's, I think, interesting. Memories fade. It had been a long time since I'd read it and understood the detail. And of course, we understood it then in a different context than we understand it now. And so counselors can go through that and take a look, and like I said, maybe Mr. City Manager, we can put this online so the citizens can see and recall. One of the most interesting things, though, are on page 75, because frankly, I had forgotten this and I had filled one out. There were several notices that went to all of the citizens. One was on December 11th, 2014, explaining, obviously in very short bullet point terms, what was going on, what was going to happen with the reassessment. It's not going to tell that, and this is a mass notice, so it's not telling them about their property or their taxes, or this is just, hey, this is what's going to be happening. And that was in December 11th, 2014. And then on June 3rd, 2015, there's another, just sort of, hey, we're still at this business and this is what's going on. And then on July 15th, 2015, there's another one that's actually really interesting. Oh, no, it's another one on May 2nd, 2015. So there were several notices sent to all the citizens. But on May 2nd, what's interesting, this is the one I'd forgotten about, every person who owns a residential property, whether it's owner-occupied or rental property, received a questionnaire. And, of course, y'all won't be able to see it from there, but, and it says, this is what we have on your property, is this right? And it says, what's your square footage, what's your total number of bedrooms, bathrooms, are there any additional fixtures, fireplaces, I guess condition of your, or what type of foundation do you have, crawl space or whatever. Central heating, dwelling, owner occupied, rental, if it's rental income, what are you charging and so forth. And like I said, I had completely forgotten about it. Now, you weren't supposed to do anything if you felt the information was correct. But if you felt the information was in error, you were supposed to, if it said you had 4 bedrooms and you only had 3, or you had 4 bathrooms and you only had 1, you were supposed to, correct all that stuff. And what jogged my memory about it is that in one of the rental properties that my husband and I happen to own, there was some incorrect information. And so I only filled out and corrected 1 and sent it back. But that'll be good, I think, for citizens. It might jog their memory. And so anyway, I just think it's a good thing to see. It's not saying it's going to change anybody's mind about whether they think their taxes are fair. I'm not suggesting that, or their valuation's fair. That's for the folks who are doing the appeals. But it does bring back our memory to things that really were over a several years period. And the other thing is, too, that we were able to find out is that we discussed the reappraisal in other contexts, which I think we may have forgotten, which was during the TAD, and you weren't involved in this, John, I don't think at all. The tax commissioner may have been, but when we were talking about TADs, one of the things, and there's a lot of footage, and I think Lisa's handed out a jump drive of all the hours, of presentations, PowerPoint presentations, but in some of the footage of Ken Bleakley coming forward to talk about TADs and all that, one of the things we were very concerned about was if we freeze these tax values in these particular districts where we want to see improvement, is the reappraisal going to come back, the reappraisals of X district going to come back substantially higher, and now all of a sudden with no investment, no new project, are we going to be ceding all this tax income to the TAD for street improvements and projects simply because the reappraisal has increased the value of people's properties. So again, it was just interesting to see now as we look back to try to understand how this all came about, that we had a really fuller context than we have discussed just with you. Now, again, that does not mean that we knew so many people were going to be so upset and that there were going to be questions about lakes and retention ponds and, all these other things that we've spent hours and hours and hours of going through. But it is certainly, gave me anyway, a little bit more comfort that this did not appear out of the blue. This was not a bolt of lightning that just occurred one day. And so I commend to the counselors, and again, to any citizen that wants to see it, those minutes, the PowerPoint presentations, the letters that are in here, some of the other supplemental stuff, and then again, this jump drive, to hear the blow-by-blow of kind of how it all came about. So we won't, go into it anymore. I've heard several people say, and a couple, counselors have said, we just want to move on. And I think we all want to move on in making sure that our citizens are comfortable and confident that we have a fair taxing and assessment system here, that we certainly from this point forward implement this new system in a way that everybody's comfortable with for the best information and process we can have in Muskogee County. I'm glad we've reached that point. And again, I think we do all want to move forward. We look forward to your continued updates. And I think this has been a good education to us exactly what the system is. There may be additional questions as we move forward. The other thing, actually, this particular jump drive is not the presentations. I'm sorry, I forgot. We can get you that. If counselors want to see the hours of the PowerPoints and the questions and everything as it was coming forward and being discussed. This jump drive is 5,000 something pages. It's a response to council's request of all the supportive documentation related to Tyler. I can't remember that now, but there was the list of questions and those questions, and then a litany of things counselors read off that they wanted to see. software things and reconciling things and your processes and all that, not yours, Tyler's. And that's what this is. And Randy, I don't know if you want to describe it anymore, but it's 6,000 pages of information.
It's approximately 5,000 documents, and I think it originated with a list that may have come from Councilor Davis to the city attorney. After the meeting, I met with the Tyler Technologies representatives, and I told them to provide us with flash drives that had all of the reports, all of the spreadsheets, all of the information they had provided to us, and I put it on the flash drives. It's divided into two categories, the software update category and the revaluation category. And all the reports that they gave us, all the updates that they provided to us are on there.
Great. Okay, thank you. Well, we've got a lot to look at. So again, we've got this jump drive with these documents. We've got these minutes and presentations and so forth. We can all take a look at that, study it if we have any questions. And then, of course, if you'd like to see the entire presentation, Lisa can get those. I think she's already been pulling those, and we can get those on Jump Drive as well and get those to counselors. Counselor Davis.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. And I just wanted to highlight that I know you got your table of contents starts with September 9th, but actually this was discussed, you brought it to us as a matter of importance for succession planning back in your budget letter in 2014. Along with that, shortly after that, I believe it was during the budget sessions that it was being discussed as an important matter again from succession planning. I think it was used as tax assessors reform, whatever that meant at that time, and also a systems software upgrade. So I think it goes back a little bit further than this, but just want to bring that to your attention.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, actually, a couple of things. One, there was succession planning, and of course that's done with the departments asking. They come during budget and they talk about what they think they need. Every department does that, whether it's the police department or the fire department or the tax assessor's office. And they felt this would be most prudent to have a position created. And so we compile that in the mayor's letter. It's not so much the mayor's idea, although I'm happy to propose it. I listen to the best ideas coming from our great departments and offices and then propose those. The software, however, I'd love to say I'm smart enough to know about suggesting software, but we rely completely on our IT department and the individual departments to tell us what they need. So I'd appreciate the suggestion that the mayor thought that there should be new software, but certainly that comes to us as a recommendation from the departments, and then we compile them and say this is how we think the resources of the city need to be distributed in this particular year, and then council, of course, can make that decision. Yes, sir.
And you know, I don't know why you would think that, but I'm just making a point that that's when it was introduced, the context of it. I know there's a PowerPoint presentation, and certainly, you know, that's a long time back, so I wouldn't know who suggested at that point, but it was a heavy part of the discussion at that time.
Sure. Well, what we can do, and why don't we do this as a referral, Mr. City Manager, why don't we pull up the budget letter from that year, and we can just, you know, get that to council too, and so they can see exactly what was in that, okay? And maybe, Lisa, if we had budget hearings that involved the tax assessor's office, the tax commissioner requested it as well, so it would probably be in the tax commissioner's section as well. We can just add it to the little book and to the thumb drive, okay? Which PowerPoint?
The one that was brought to us, as well as the letter.
Oh, the PowerPoint. Oh, he's talking about, he believes I did a PowerPoint with, yeah, well, he's talking about the mayor's PowerPoint presentation, aren't you?
I think it came along with the budget, which is the
Yeah.
your proposed
I don't know
budget.
that I
That's what I'm
did it in
saying.
the year he's thinking. I did that in 2015
It's 2014,
or
Mayor.
16.
If you'd like a copy, I
Was the
have one
first.
for you.
But we will look and see, okay? And we'll get that. The recommendation of the mayor of how to distribute the city's money to various departments will be presented to council. Okay. Let's see, I think that concludes us then with, and we'll just, if you'll put that on the agenda so we can walk through that next time and add it back to the book. All right, let's see here. We've got the city attorney's agenda, so we'll turn it over to Mr. Fay at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. The first item up, we need a vote on the school tax levy at 23.321 mils. They have certified that rate.
We've got a motion and second for approval. Is there any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll turn it over for electronic voting. And it passes.
Okay. Thank you. The next item,
Okay, we've got Councilor Davis with questions.
And this is to whomever could answer it, but I know that the letter that came from Dr. Lewis to us talked about the anticipated growth in the digest, that it was greater than expected previously. What was the previous tax digest projected at with the school district?
Excuse me. Mr. City Manager?
Madam Mayor, they projected a 1% growth in the digest, and they advertised it at 1% growth in the digest. And of course, the number that they were dealing with was 13%. And that's before all of the appeals and TADs and everything else is sorted out. And state law says when you advertise, you have to be within 3% of what you advertised. And so that their number was off, and so they had to go back and go through a process, and that's what they have done to get to this point.
And again, what did we originally project the anticipated growth of the tax digest?
The city, we projected 2.4%, but we advertised at 7%. And so when we got the number back that said 10%, we were, of course, within the 3% that's allowed by state law, and that's why we have not had to go back through this process.
So when did the city first learn about it being 10%?
When we brought it to you, when we came to the last business meeting, I believe it had been, we had just learned about that at that time when we brought it, when we came at the last business meeting.
The last meeting we had?
Yes.
And the school district was at 13?
They had just learned as well. We had just gotten that notification, I believe, from the tax assessor's office?
Tax Commissioner's number.
From the tax commissioner at that time. And so as soon as we learned about it and as soon as they learned about it, they moved into action because time was of essence.
Okay. Well, and just so everybody would be clear about this, I think that it's all projections right now that nobody really knows because this hasn't been sorted out.
Well,
So at the end of the day, we don't know where it's going to be. Is that correct?
absolutely. We will not know until, and you're getting updates at every meeting from the tax assessor. When all of that is sorted out and tax allocation districts and whatever else, that is when we'll really know.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Looks like there's no more questions. Mr. City Attorney?
all right. Next item is a first reading hearing on a zoning matter. This is 3716 Gentian Boulevard. Mr. Flowers is here, Mr. Gillum's here. Their petition for general commercial shopping center recommended approval. We will let a person speak for or against this item on second reading, which is a little unusual, but because of the time change of the council meeting. We will allow that in 2 weeks if anybody wants to be heard, but if any councilors have questions of the petitioners, they are here. Any questions? All right. We will take that matter up again in 2 weeks at the 5:30 meeting and see if anybody wants to be heard, and then council can vote on it. All right. Thank y'all for being here. That's all we have listed, Mayor. We've covered Judge Hunter.
Okay,
Thank
great,
you.
thank you. All right, we will move on then. We have contacted everyone. I want to thank the clerk and as well as the assistant clerk for thanking everyone on, contacting everyone or attempting to contact everyone on the public agenda. We'll make sure they get rescheduled. We've got the city manager's agenda. Mr. Hughley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got 3 purchase items on my agenda and 1 presentation update on tax anticipation note. First, I've got printing, postage, and mail processing service of motor vehicle registration renewal notices.
Got a motion and second for approval. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay. The item is queued for your electronic voting. And it passes.
B is removal and installation program and services of computers for police pursuit vehicles.
Got a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on this item?
Ye-
Mr., let's see, we've got Councilor Baker.
The city manager address it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll just mention briefly, if you have more detailed questions, we have Captain Easy here, but this is for 116 pursuit vehicles where Motorola will remove old, outdated motor data terminal computers from these vehicles, 116 of them, and they will install and program the new updated computers.
That's good. I just want to make sure there wasn't a problem with the new ones that were coming back out.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, there being no further questions, you may vote electronically. And the item passes.
C is business lines agreement with AT&T, asking council to approve this agreement at a cost of $35 per business phone line, and it's a 36 months agreement. The current agreement is $35.
We've got a motion and second for approval, and we have discussion with Councilor Thomas.
I'm just wondering if Mr. Tolley would explain to me what this is.
Sure.
Yes, this is what you'd call just your regular phone lines, the ones like come into most people's houses, the copper phone lines that you just use to call on.
Is this just the basic charge for the,
Correct. And we have about 100, well, we have exactly 100 lines that are on this agreement right now, and they include things like the backup 911, and they're the copper lines that come in. They're not the internet-based phones or the VoIP phones. They're the actual old-fashioned copper lines, and that is what these are the business lines for. They also are in some of the elevators because that's required by, I guess, certain regulations. So these are the what you would call a typical like you have at your house phone. And this is not like the office phones that we use on our desk, but these are special purpose phones that are just a backup system, or either they're the copper line phones. So it's your typical old-fashioned business phone.
and so you said we have 100 of these?
Yes, ma'am.
And so this is a $35 per,
Line, $3,500 a month. Yes, ma'am. Currently, we pay more than that, and we're trying to get it onto their current rates.
okay, thank you.
All right, we've got a motion and second and no further discussion. And the item is, hold on a second, it's now queued for voting. And, see, Councilor Davis? All right, and it does pass.
And Mayor and Council, I've got, the Finance Director is going to come forward and talk about tax anticipation notes. And of course, you know, with the current challenge that we all have, both the school district and city, with the delayed collection of property tax. There's a cash flow issue or concern that we want to be prepared for in the event we need a tax anticipation note. She's going to just talk about basically what that is and how it works.
All right. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. As the city manager stated, I have a very brief presentation to give about tax anticipation notes. We do have with me today Ricardo Cornejo. He is our one of our financial advisors from Davenport and Company, and he is available to assist in answering any questions after the presentation. So what's a tax anticipation note? Tax anticipation notes, or TANs, as we also refer to them, are issued by counties, school districts, and cities to finance current cash flow deficits in anticipation of future tax collections. Georgia's Constitution permits governing authorities of any county, municipality, or political subdivision to incur this debt every year by obtaining temporary loans to pay for their expenses. So what are the requirements? TANs, or tax anticipation notes, do not require a voter referendum, and they may be entered into if the following conditions are met. So number one is the aggregate amount of all such loans shall not exceed 75% of total gross income from taxes collected in the last preceding year. 75% of property taxes collected last fiscal year, which was FY17, would amount to $62.5 million. That amount for just the general fund is $28.9 million. So that's 75%, so they shall not exceed 75%. Such loans shall be payable on or before December 31st of the calendar year in which the loan is made. So if we take out a note this year, it has to be paid back before the 31st of December this year, 2017. No such loan may be obtained when there's a loan then unpaid obtained if in any prior year. So we can't get a tax anticipation note for this current year if we have an old one that's outstanding for whatever reason. And no such county, municipality, or other political subdivision of this state shall incur in any one calendar year an aggregate of such temporary loans or other contracts, notes, warrants, or obligations for current expenses in excess of the total anticipated revenue for such calendar year. I will just say for FY18, our anticipated revenue from an operating budget standpoint is just above $268 million. Within the general fund, our anticipated revenue is a little bit more than $147 million. So we are not looking to exceed those limits by no means. So while we're looking to possibly obtain a TAN is to alleviate cash flows. This is due to the delay in receiving our property tax revenue. TANs are not uncommon. These are instruments that are used throughout the country by school districts and counties, and some of them use them on a regular basis, on an annual basis, just because of timing, just when their expenses are due and when they typically receive their property tax revenue. So in 2017, our property taxes are due the 1st of December, and so this year for us is just a timing issue. Property tax revenue is approximately 26% of the general fund revenue, which is a lot. Overall, property tax revenue is about 31% of all operating revenue, so about a third of our operating budget is made up from property tax revenue, and again, 26% of our general fund revenue is from property taxes. So what's next? So what we'd like to do is request approval from council to authorize the issuance of a TAN at the next council meeting. This is just to ensure compliance with our recently adopted debt management policy. We were also, with the assistance of our financial advisors and bond counsel, will issue a request for bid to local, regional, and national banking institutions. We'd like to go ahead and proceed with that. It has to be out on the street for a certain period of time, and there's no obligation from the city to accept any offers. But after the bids have been evaluated, of course, council will approve a resolution to actually formally award the bid to a potential lender. And that is it.
Okay, we've got several questions here. We have Counselor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Angelica, thank you for the information. Do you anticipate, because I know I've talked to a lot of people that have indicated they intend to go ahead and mail in, just because they're kind of in the habit of over the years on the residential property, mailing in that 40%, I think, and prepay it, so to speak. Do you, if we got enough of those folks that just did that, just because their accounting process kind of handles that for them, especially homestead exemption, is there a possibility we might be able to have the line of credit available and not access it?
That's correct. That's very possible.
So is there, I mean, obviously that lessens the fees. Are there still fees for getting the line of credit approved?
There are some fixed costs we'd have to pay regardless of whether or not we
Just no
utilize
interest
it.
because we wouldn't have utilized it?
That's correct.
Okay.
So we would save on our interest payments if we didn't utilize the line of credit.
And I know you guys have analyzed this pretty closely, and I know you've been working hard on it. Have you kind of set a target date for when we need to have some of this money come in order to avoid having a borrow?
We anticipate trying to close around the middle of October. So sometime during the second week of October, we anticipate closing, which is why we'd like to proceed forward with just getting the RFP out on the street so that there's enough time for the banks to review those proposals, and hopefully we get a lot of good offers back, a lot of good proposals in. So, because November for us is really where it gets to be tight.
Right.
We hope to receive advances from the tax commissioner's office. Usually, for the people that do pay early, they do provide some sort of advance to us before the due date based on what they've already collected. But just in case,
Yeah.
we'd like to have something in place.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
All right, we have Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess I was going to ask what was the drop dead date?
Well, again, we'd like to go ahead and get the RFP out on the street so that when we come back to meet on the 10th of October, at that particular council meeting, council can award the bid to the potential lender, and then that way we have a couple of days that we could finalize and do the closing.
Do you have some real numbers associated with this?
Our early estimates were about $10 to $12 million as far as what we would like to receive. We are still finishing those calculations with bond counsels. There's obviously some restrictions on the amount that we can borrow. So we're still finalizing those numbers. We'll actually have that information at the next council meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we have Counselor Davis.
So what I hear you saying here is that you really, you don't know if, number one, you're going to need to borrow money, and you don't really know how much right now. You just want to go out and shop for rates.
Well,
We want, I'll say to you, we'd rather be safe than sorry.
Well, and that's understandable.
And so, and we think being safe would be paying whatever fee would be necessary and not use it rather than not have it and not pay fees and then need it. And so I guess with that said, we don't know if we're going to need it, and if we need it, we don't exactly know how much, but we want an account that we can go to if we need it, even if you got to pay a fee, but no, if you don't use it, even if you got to pay a fee, and then there's no interest involved.
Well, why would you need a fee to shop rates? Why would you have to pay a fee to shop rates?
Well, no, I think if you're saying that if we go after the 10 and establish that 10, and it's sitting there with the opportunity for us to use it, and we don't use it, then there's I don't know what the fee is, an administrative fee or whatever the fee is.
To actually put out the RFP, there are no fees. For the shopping of the rates, so to speak, there are no fees associated with that. The fees come into place when we get to awarding the actual bid to the vendor. We have closing costs that we have to pay to the attorneys and so forth. Those are the fixed fees that we can't avoid. But to put the RFP out, there's no fees associated with that. I mean, if it comes back, unfavorable for whatever reason, if that was a possibility, we could reject all bids.
Yeah.
And there be no
Are government
fees.
institutions, help me out here, can government institutions have a line of credit?
She just went through that.
You come over there.
And this is our representative from Davenport, and he's our financial advisor, and he's going to introduce himself and
Mayor,
answer your
council,
question.
staff.
Pardon?
Ricardo Cordejo with Davenport. The way that we would do the request for bid is to do two options. One would be for the entire amount, which at this point is maybe $12 million. And then another option would be to do a draw, or as you said, a line of credit. Therefore, the interest would only be paid on whatever amount the city would use.
Do we have a line of credit now then? So what you're telling me is that governments can have a line of credit?
In this particular sense, as we do the TAN issue, the way that we're going to construct this, the RFB, it's, yes, we are asking for, basically, you're bidding, the banks, the several banks would either bid on a full amount or bid on what we would call kind of a draw, or in this case, what we call a line of credit. But really, at the end of the day, it's really a draw that they're doing. So you may say, we only need $6 million, then that's what the bank would be lending you, and that's what the city would be paying on interest.
So I'm confused. Who goes and who's talking to the banks?
We have a database of over 40 banks. We will have regional banks. We will have banks here in the city of Columbus, particularly any banks that the city would like us to send those RFBs to. And then we have national banks that we send it to. Therefore, there may be a bank from different states that want to do business here in Columbus.
Well, if you do, from what I know, if you do a line of credit, I mean, those rates are not going to vary much. They're market rates, and they're not going to vary much. So I would think that you would probably be in a situation where you would be able to get your best rate right here where you do business.
And certainly, we can issue the RFB out there to the local banks. We are going to do that. We have them. We're actually doing something with another locale here and have issued the RFB to the local banks here. Now, whether they bid or not, I don't know, but we do have them, and they have received that RFB.
Is that and forgive me,
Absolutely.
I've never heard of the name of your firm before, your group, but would that be a fee that you would charge the client or the city here from this standpoint?
Well, let me just say that, and I apologize that you have not heard the name, but Davenport has been here many, many times before, and they've been our financial advisor for probably 25, 30 years. So.
Are you talking about our bond underwriter?
No, our financial advisor.
I don't think I've ever seen this gentleman before.
You haven't seen him because he's standing in for Courtney, a gentleman that you would be accustomed to seeing. And Courtney, couldn't that be here?
No, he's in New York at a pricing right now.
When do we usually
I'm
see
here
them,
in
Isaiah?
Atlanta.
Pardon?
When do we usually see these guys?
Well, they were here when we talked about, anytime we deal with bond ratings, when we went to New York to deal with our bond rating.
I got you.
We traveled with Davenport. They were there and they represent us. They were at the table.
You're talking about credit ratings.
When we deal with credit ratings,
Okay,
it's
all right.
Davenport. that
Okay,
we
I
deal
got
with.
you now, okay.
Yes.
Okay. But that would it be a fee for you to send out these RFPs?
No, not at all,
Okay,
sir. And again,
okay.
as Angelica has stated, there is no obligation to the city.
Okay.
And if the rates come back and it's not something that you want to move forward in, then you do not
Okay.
move forward.
Okay. Mr. City Manager, and last question here, what would keep the city from, if we had to just do payroll and delay all other expenses? I don't know what other obligations we have out there, but I'm sure that during this period, could be some that could be delayed. Would that still require the city, if you utilize all revenue available just for payroll, would that still require the city to take out a tax allocation? I mean, excuse me, a tax anticipation note?
I'll yield to the finance director, but I would say yes. And I just got to remind you, and you know that but for this situation that we're in my history of this government, we've never done a tax anticipation note. We've never had to. And this is a unique or different circumstance. And, I don't know what the fees would be if we get the TAN approved and not use it, but I believe those fees would be very nominal fees.
I don't think there'd be a fee with a line of credit.
Well, let me tell you, Davenport has been our financial advisor for many years, and that's what they do, advise.
No, I understand that, Mr. City Manager. I'm just telling you how the market works.
Well, I think they know how the market works.
Well, a lot of us do.
This is what they do every day, and they've got highly skilled professionals. That's why we hire them to deal with us on our bond rating. And that's why the school district, I believe they use them as well. And all over the state of Georgia and outside the state of Georgia, they are the highly skilled professionals who I would like to listen to.
Who do we bank with local?
Well, we every 5 years, we do an RFP for banking. It's CB&T right now.
Okay. And I'm presuming that it would probably be a customized package, right?
The RFP.
Come on, sir, if you would come up, because we can't
Right.
pick your voice up.
The RFP would be customized to all the banks, and so it would just talk through the structure and then how the option one and option two, one is bidding on the entire amount, one is bidding as a draw process, and when the closing would be. In the RFP, you would have a draft of the TAN resolution, you would have an opinion from your bond counsel, and you would have basically a banker's certificate that says that the bank understands that they're bidding on this and they've done their due diligence, and finally a cash flow analysis of what exactly is needed for the actual TAN.
Yeah. Okay.
And to answer your question, Councilor Davis, we have requested all departments to delay purchases that are important, but that could be delayed. One of the things, such as the capital that was approved in the budget, we've requested departments to delay purchasing those items until January. So I think from an expenditure standpoint, our departments have taken heed and only purchasing those items that are necessary to sustain operations.
And right now, you don't know if you're going to need to utilize a short-term loan or a line of credit?
No, not at this particular time. What we did initially was look at all of the revenue that we received at this point in time for FY17, so for last year, and we looked at what the expenditures were. Now, granted, since we are requesting departments to delay purchasing, the expenditures for this year would be a little less than what may have been spent this time last year. But in doing that particular exercise, we saw that by the end of November, we were short about a little bit more than $10 million. And so that's why we don't know the exact amount, which is why we would like to draw, because we may not need $10 million. We may only need, $5 million. So we just
And
want to
that-
have it in place just in case that we need it.
And that has to be paid back before the end of the year.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, well, and I ask those questions because I just, one, I don't, if you don't have to pay these fees, we don't need to pay fees. There's nothing wrong, and I would probably advocate to open a line of credit.
Yeah.
Because that would be advantageous, but I guess what I'm asking really is the possibility to manage our way through this.
Yeah, I
Is what I'm saying. But yes, I would agree with you if you don't open it now, I don't know how long it takes, but certainly, if we're doing a lot of business, I wouldn't foresee locally having a problem customizing a package and having that answer within a few days. So that's my reflection on it, Mayor. So I'm finished. Thank you. Thank you.
And Council Davis, just know that I appreciate, your question, and I guess if Davenport, our financial advisor, who we've relied on for many years, and they've worked hand in hand with our bond counsel, with Jim Purnell and others out of Savannah. They've traveled with us, and they, even when the bond rating companies come to visit us, we don't sit with bond rating companies without our financial advisor, because they're the ones we expect to coach us through getting our best bond rating. But I would be disappointed if they would allow us to go through this process and there's an opportunity to get no interest or lower interest money, and they didn't direct us in that direction.
I doubt that's out there, but
Yeah, and so.
I'd love to have that.
The locals, pardon?
I said I'd love to have that deal.
Yeah, and so I know that's not out there, but so locals will have a chance at this when we do put the request out, and their whole thing is to make sure that we get the best rate and the best deal, whether they be local, within state, or out of state, and that's what we're looking to them to get us the best possible deal.
And I think through this, I have enough confidence in our people. I have a lot of confidence in our people, and I think that they are very professional and can manage us through this situation. And again, it's really boils down to managing the budget and for a short-term period. And that's the question I'm asking before you go out there. Having access to it is not a bad thing at this point.
Well, and I agree, because, we have unforeseen, we didn't know Irma was going to occur, and we certainly didn't know it was going to hit directly before Columbus.
Well,
and we simply, sometimes there are unanticipated things, and something could happen between now and when we get our collection, and so we want to make sure that our city is secure, and I know you want
in
that.
respect to, I'm willing to approve the ability to have that available, but at this point, I'd really like to understand, as we get closer, what our needs will be, or what actually, if there is any risk there in taking out debt on a short-term basis. I'd like to know that later. But I have no problems having the ability to have access if needed.
Yeah. Well, certainly, and of course, we would not utilize it, just know, without coming back to you.
Okay. I didn't know the presentation kind of referred to that. I think the finance director kind of referred to that, but you will be coming back to us later.
Well, first of all, we're going to go ahead and do the RFP.
Yeah.
RFB.
RFB. And we're going to do that immediately because there's no consequence to that. I mean, you just put it out there, kind of like we do with requests for proposals. We'll come back with a resolution at the next agenda
That's correct.
to get your approval that we move forward with a TAN. And then we'll go through the process, and once we get the RFB back and we identify who the successor vendor is,
Then we'll come back
then we'll come back to you. And then, yeah, there may be if it's 12 million and that's the max, that doesn't mean we're going to go and get 12, and we only pay interest on what we draw. Is that right?
Right, that's correct.
And so, and if we were going to need $5 million, we'd be coming back to you to say that we need to.
Which leads me one more question, Mr. City Manager. Is it by law that we have to RFP something like this when we already have a contract with a local bank?
Well, we don't have a contract for
Well, we
this
have a-
with the local
we have
bank,
a-
and if we were going to do it, it would be another competitive process to allow every bank in our, every bank to.
Is that by law or is just what we're doing?
Well, I don't think we don't sole source banking.
No, we don't.
So we go through a process, and we do it every 5 years to give, so that we don't, in banks, every 5 years, right?
That's correct, every 5 years.
Right, you said we currently have an agreement with CB&T.
Yeah, and before CB&T, we were with
SunTrust.
SunTrust. So
That's not part of the scope of services?
It is not.
No.
Okay, all right. And it's not by law that we have to take it out for RFP?
I'd have to let someone else handle.
I would err on the side of caution and say yes. It would be more beneficial to us as a city, and as well as to make sure that we are prudently spending the taxpayers' money, putting out a competitive bid process to make sure that all the banks have the ability to bid for our services.
Because no doubt if we went to one bank over the other, you'd be hearing from, we hear with radios and whatever the case is. One bank is not going to just let you go and do business with a sole source bank, and they don't have any issues because they're in business too in our community.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
All right, we have Counselor Baker.
This is completely independent of the school district. This is just us.
That's correct.
We have our own process, they will have their own, and there's really no relationship between the two.
That's correct.
As far as this piece is concerned.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I think they've done the same thing.
Yes, theirs is due back on Friday.
Okay. All right, good, thank you. Any chance those are, this may be a question for you, are structured to where if we, would the interest rate be the same, or if you drew more down, you get a cheaper rate than if we only have to draw a certain amount? Is it a staggered rate like that, or you anticipate a flat rate? Or?
I think what the banks would look at is when you look at a TAN, and I came from that field, from the banking side of it, and you look at the entity, which is Columbus, and you look at the length of time and the amount. So the rates, a bank will look at that and say, well, I have about 60 days of using an interest rate, so I'm going to bid a particular way, also on the basis of them underwriting the city. So you will see hopefully a less rate as less of the money is that they're using, but a lot of times they're going to focus on your entity and the length of time they get to have that interest rate. And in this case, we have less than 90 days, maybe about 65 days. So that's the way a underwriting bank will look at that, their underwriting staff, and the banker will look at it.
Okay. And this credit instrument, a little bit different than a traditional line of credit, because those are usually underwritten by assets, whereas this is really just secured by a revenue stream of.
It is, but if I would assume their credit department would sit down and look at your CAFRs over the last 3 years and basically analyze everything as if they were doing any sort of loan for you.
Traditional loan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And Councilor Davis, I want to go back, and staff can help me correct myself too. Robert Morris, is it Morris or Morrison? Robert Morrison was our financial advisor representative that you were accustomed to seeing over the years. And then his organization was absorbed by Davenport some years ago. And then Robert Morrison continued, he was with that group and continued to come before you. And then Courtney started to come as Robert retired. And so over the last few years, it's been Davenport, but for many years it was Robert Morrison. And you all would probably recognize his face as well.
All right, we have Counselor Thomas.
I have several things I want to ask you about. Councilor Baker mentioned the school district. It's my understanding from media reports that the district probably is going to request a TAN also. And I'm wondering if, since we both use Davenport, would there be any advantage to us for us to talk to them together? And I don't know if you know the answer to that, but I would certainly ask that somebody check it out and see if both the school district and the city can get better rates or a better deal by somehow or another working these RFPs together, that we do that.
Yeah, and I will say that theirs is already out, but we will certainly, staff will have that conversation with
Just have the
Davenport.
conversation and see if we can save a little money and they can save a little money, it all saves in the end. The second thing that I wanted to ask about, Ms. Alexander, did I hear you say that the property tax revenue is about $65 million?
That was 75% of the FY17 collections was about $62.5 million.
Okay. And as I understand, the reason that we are doing this is that typically, in years past, taxpayers have paid 40% of have been obligated to pay at least 40% by October 1 and then 60% by December 1. And in this year, because of some of the other things that we're dealing with, it will be 100% due December 1. Is that?
That's correct.
Basically correct. So that what we're looking at in this year is that 40% that we typically collect October 1, that we will not collect necessarily this year. We can't absolutely count on that. As Councilor Henderson said, some people can pay early if they wish to do that. But we're basically looking at that 40%, which is about $25 million of the total property tax that we collect. So this tax anticipation note would be to fill in for that $25 million that we may or may not get from October 1 to December 1. Is that a correct statement? Because if everything went as it typically does, we don't typically do tax anticipation notice because that 40% carries us through until we get our money. So we're really looking to try to bridge that gap.
Exactly. You're hesitating about saying it, but what you explained is the plain and simple way, in my understanding, to explain it. That $25 million we know that we will not get by October 1st. And if we do the tax anticipation note, then it could be up to, let's say, $12 million, I think you've heard.
Yeah.
And so that would help bridge the gap, and hopefully, as Councilor Henderson has said, some will pay early, and if they pay early and we delay our purchases, that other 12 or whatever, it may be that we only need 5 if we need that. So it's all, that's how we get to, that's.
So if people just follow their regular pattern,
Yes.
we may not need to do any of this, or we may need to do a smaller
That's right.
amount.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that all of those numbers that are floating around in there, I understand. The other thing that I wanted to ask is, and I don't know, the city attorney may need to help us with this one too. If you come back to us, Ms. Alexander, and ask us to approve trying to secure for a line of credit, I'm not sure that's the technical term, but this tax anticipation note, and we give you that permission, and we set a top limit of $12 million, for example, do you, under our policy that says the city manager is authorized to approve up to $10,000, would you have to come back to us in order to access that line of credit? Or do you anticipate that our giving you the right to ask for a line of credit also gives you the right to decide and get that line of credit?
Well,
do you?
I get what you're saying, and I would see this as being something along the lines of what we do currently for GMA. Sometimes when council approves us to proceed forward with a lease purchase through GMA, we don't always get that money up front, and that's typically because GMA will not give us that money until we've actually made a purchase. We don't pay, like if we're ordering vehicles, we don't pay for the vehicles until they are actually in our fleet yard, we've inspected the vehicle, and then we pay for it. Well, council would have already secured the funding for the vehicle already, and what GMA would have done is set up an account for us to draw that money down from, so that when we make those purchases for those vehicles, we send that information to the bank, and then they send us our money back. So I would anticipate this would be similar to the process that we have in place currently.
But to answer, I heard your question maybe a little bit different. If you approved, let's say, $5 million that we could draw on, we would go through our normal budget process to bring things to council. It wouldn't change anything. It's just that money is out there to bridge the gap, and our government would operate the same. We just just like we've got an account now that the money is in, that would be an account that we can draw on, but nothing about the government operations would change. If whatever the city manager's limit is, it wouldn't change.
Well, let me see if I can do it this way. If we said to you, do the RFP, go out, get the line of credit, and you said to us, we're going to, at the top end, say we need a line of credit of $12 million, and it comes down to, after all of the December 1 and all of the taxes collected, you really don't need but $5 million. Do you have to come back to council and say, we only need $5 million, and therefore we want you to approve our getting this line of credit at $5 million?
You would have already approved the bid up to whatever the amount is.
Okay, and so how will council know that you have accessed this line of credit?
I can make that a part of the finance.
If you don't have to come back to us and say, we're ready to do this, how do we know you've done it?
Yeah.
Well, I think what you're saying, and I'm just, correct me if I'm not understanding what you're saying correctly. What you're saying is, when we access the money, do we come back to council every time we access the money? I think for us, because council only meets twice a month, that would possibly put us in a cash flow issue if we need access to the money before a council meeting. So that's why I explained the current process with GMA. Once council approves the award, approves the bid, approves us utilizing and issuing the TAN, then it's up to that amount. And I could make it a part of the monthly finance update to say X amount of dollars of the money was drawn down this month.
And that's what I would suggest if, and we'd be going, making a draw on it only if we had to. And then when she does the monthly update, then she could report to you at that time that, the tax anticipation note, we made a $100,000 draw.
Well, one of the things that has been said this afternoon is that we may or may not, we want to do this to cover our bases.
Right.
And we may or may not need from nothing up to about $12 million. And so my question is, when we say, go forth and get this line of credit, we are in fact giving you permission to get however much it is we have set as the top
Exactly.
bound of that. Okay.
To keep the government moving forward.
Right.
And so you'd only draw because you don't want to pay interest on what you don't need. So you'd only draw on what you need because you got to pay interest on it.
Okay. I know, Mr. City Manager, sometimes I have to make this stuff really simple for me to understand it. Thank you.
Good questions.
All right, we have the Mayor Pro Tem.
Two things. I hope that we don't just go with local banks, that we're going to also send RFBs out to other banks too.
Yes, it'll be local, regional, national.
Okay. And as far as the coming back to council, since the limit for the city manager spending is $10,000, he has to bring anything else back to us before he spends it anyway.
Yeah, and
that doesn't change.
And if we bring something to you, typically on my agenda, when we're spending something, we tell you where the funds are coming from at the bottom.
That's what I was going to say too.
And so it would list funding source, and we would then have to say tax anticipation note.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a good point you make. Well, at the end of every purchase, we typically tell you where the funding is coming from.
Right.
We'll say sewer fund, paving fund, general fund, or it's budgeted in public safety, whatever, we would list that, is all we're saying.
Yeah, okay. Councilor Woodson, did you have something?
No, I was just wondering when Councilor Thomas was talking about, I thought we gave, that it would come to us anyway, because I thought in this council, we said anything beyond $10,000, it would have to come to us. So I didn't see the conversation unless I'm confusing it.
You're correct on the limit as far as the procurement of services or goods. The limit is $10,000. That's why sometimes our purchasing agenda is as long as it is because of that limit being $10,000. But
in this case, it wouldn't matter.
No, because council would have already authorized up to a certain dollar amount.
All right, Councilor Thomas?
I have been given some information by our assistant city city attorney, who said that we will already have approved in two steps.
Right.
We will approve you putting out the RFP, and then we would approve how much, once you get the RFP, we would approve how much the line of credit would be.
Right.
And so my concern was, do we need to do a third approval for you to draw on it? And I think that because this is something that we are not accustomed to, the more information you can give us as we go along with this, the better it would be. I hope that I did not give you the impression that I think that you would try to hide anything from us. I don't think that at all. But as you do this, because it is different, let us know as much as you can, as often as you can.
Yeah, and as I said, to get this in place in a timely manner, we are going to go ahead and do our request for bid. That's just what we advertise it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're not going to wait for the next meeting to do that. We're going to go ahead and do that, and then when we come back at the next meeting, we'll bring a resolution.
Right, but the resolution that we'll be bringing back is it's really informational for council. So when we come back on the 26th, we'll come back with a resolution saying, yes, we know that you're going to issue a TAN, the dollar amount will be in the resolution at that time. We'll put a copy of the request for proposal that went out to the banks in it at that time, so you can see the structure of the document and what actually was put out there. And then the time frame from when the requests are due, based on our preliminary schedule, they won't be due back until about the 4th of October. So when we come back on the 10th of October, when council meets again on the 10th, that's when you will officially award the bid to the potential lender and also give the official authorization to get a draw for X amount of dollars.
And set the top limit.
And set the top limit.
Okay.
So that'll be at the next meeting, or the October meeting?
October meeting.
The October 10th meeting is
Okay.
where they make it official. The next meeting, we were just going to do a resolution to just say we're going after a TAN. It's just something for the record books, since it's the first time that
I didn't want her to bring it today without
Right.
explaining it, so I told her we are not taking the resolution today, we're going to explain it. That's why we don't have a resolution today. And
But that resolution is not authorizing the actual issuance. It is not actually authorizing the money to be borrowed from a particular lender. The official resolution, where it really counts, is going to be on the 10th of October.
Thank you.
All right, there are no further questions.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to have Deputy City Manager Goodwin just come around and talk about the tree for fee moratorium. And you should have received a list of streets where we've had tree calls, or she's going to give it. Did you give them this? We emailed it to you.
We've got
but
Councilor
it's been-
Woodson has a question before you get started.
It's been updated since that, but give them a hard copy of this, the list of streets, so that you know where we have trees down and where they are working. And if you get a call from someone, you will know that there is a tree on that street.
I just wanted, just before you get started, I just wanted to, because I don't want it to be at the end of the meeting and then we're rushing out of here and nobody really listens. I want to commend our city government, our staff at the Civic Center, Parks and Rec, Public Works, first responders. They have done an outstanding job in the preparation to this hurricane and executing it. I went to the Civic Center, and I was very, very impressed of the organization that was done. I was very impressed that in many other shelters, the pets had to be separated from the families, and we made an area where the families can stay with their pets. It was very impressive of the organization, but most of all, was very impressive was the citizens of Columbus, Georgia. They were coming in droves, cars, constantly, wagons, constantly, and dropping off just about everything that you can think of that can be needed. Even through the storm, the little bit of rain and wind, people were still coming out and pouring their hearts. Our Parks and Rec, I mean, I don't even have the words to say about Holly and Becky. I don't even have the words to express my gratitude to them. I was with them when they were starting and working on the Frank Chester I didn't get to the Shirley B. Winston, but I can tell you that it was so impressive. The organization, the setup. I was there when they wanted to move a mayor to the Civic Center, and one lady was crying. I thought she was going to have a panic attack for a moment because she didn't want to leave it. She had felt right at home. She had felt comfortable. She had loved the staff, the doctor, everyone that was there. I've never experienced this before, so it was my first time. And I can tell you that I couldn't be any prouder of our community than I have been these couple of days. They have just been outstanding. They have sacrificed their own families to serve our community. And I think they need to know that, at least I know for sure I appreciate it and the people that I've been with. There was a gentleman there that he just broke my heart because he said, you know what, I'm coming all the way from Florida. And he said, I've had to do this before, but no one has treated us as wonderful and as loving as your community has. You know, and I didn't have even words to say, and that's hard for me now to have words to say. All I said was, well, thank you. We're very happy you're here, and that was it. But I didn't want this meeting to end without, and I've been complimenting staff completely. Even this morning, I think I woke up Isaiah real early about a tree this morning, and he was very responsive. Everybody's just been unbelievable. Unbelievable. We are so blessed with the people and our employees. And I just wanted to express that publicly because I want it to spread around that we have, even though we have our challenges in our community, we have the best community ever. Thank you to this consolidated government and everyone that have participated. I appreciate it.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, I do want to acknowledge John Dorman and the Civic Center staff, because they opened up the Civic Center, and if you had a chance to go by there to see more than 500 beds laid out, and the Civic Center staff had to really work as well. So, but John Dorman and the Civic Center staff should be recognized for what they did.
Yeah, I mentioned them too.
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, we had that where I was rattling off all that we needed to thank. I've already started the process for proclamation, so if you all have somebody that you specifically would like to be recognized, let us know. I've already gotten a note to Eric to start ticking off the list of everybody. John's on the list, the Red Cross, all the folks that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that have helped so very much. Of course, public safety. Yeah.
Well, and we'll have to get the council information, but I mentioned the millennials at the last meeting, but Public Works, they have an app now that you can access that will tell you where every tree is down.
Yeah. We used it in the emergency command center.
In the city.
We literally pulled that up to see where the storm was hitting
GIS
hardest.
Yeah. You can do that, so.
Well, it's amazing to see with the technology that the city does have. And there are some things, we'll have an after-action report. There's some things that frankly I think are not very expensive that we just need to kind of close the circle on. But it was amazing to see them pull up that app to see where the storm was hitting hardest so that then we could, the folks, Chief Myers and Chief Warren could make the decisions about where they need to deploy their resources. And so it was great to see that kind of technology.
And so Tiasha is handing you a list of streets. We did email this to you, but this is the most recent update of every street where there were trees down with the address so that you know exactly where they are. It was a helpful tool for me to be able to go and see what streets in my neighborhood, if you were going to travel, where there were trees down. And so it's a good document, yes.
Yes. 203.
We got Councilor Huff would like
There were
to say something too for Lisa before you get started.
Sure.
Councilor Huff?
Yeah, to the mayor, city manager, and all the staff of Columbus, I ran into Councilor Woodson at the Civic Center, and I took my 18-year-old son with me. I usually do, to keep him humble and understanding how life really works. And John took me personally to the back of the Civic Center to show me everything coming in, and I assisted Councilor Woodson for a little while. And I headed out to Frank Chester. And at Frank Chester, I ran into Holly, Becky, and Teresa. Holly and Becky had not been home for, I think, about 48 hours at the time that I saw them.
That's right.
And they explained to me that Red Cross and the community had provided all of the items that were needed, but they were kind of like in a stack where people had to kind of go and find them. So they took it upon themselves to go in and make sure with the Red Cross people where everything was, and they personally put pillows and blankets and bags on all of these different cots and everything. So we had about 150 set up at Frank Chester, and she had pizza and barbecue, and we moved a few cots back to a different area for some people that needed had special needs. They had an area set up for the pets, and it was just interesting watching us move about probably 15 boxes of pizza to a different area, and to watch my son interact with another teenager. And they were hungry, and they were like trying to make a deal, and it's like, no, it's no deal, just take a whole pizza. And they sat over in the corner, they ate, and we continued to do what we had to do. But it was just remarkable. I went through some things when I was about 21 years old and had to spend about 30 days in a hotel. So I spoke with a young lady from Brunswick, Georgia, and she just said she had never been treated so well outside of her city. So I just wanted to chime in and say I'm proud of our city, everything that went on, and everybody that took time to get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for those comments. We heard the same thing, absolutely, and the entire team from the Civic Center and Public Works and Parks and Rec, Public Safety, everybody came together and made it work. So teamwork certainly makes the dream work.
We got a few more comments, Lisa, but, for the community, it was amazing to see. We had, I kept saying, an overabundance of donations people couldn't imagine. We have at least a tractor trailer full of donations.
Absolutely.
That are brand new of things that will be going back to the Red Cross for the next time people need them. But somebody would say, I think they need blankets on Facebook, and we'd be like, no.
Don't need anything else.
Because we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of extra blankets and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pillows still in packages and things, and it was really amazing. Councilor Barnes.
This community is just awesome, and let's just say it in a nutshell. All the various organizations that just came up. I mean, the call went out, so many people donated. Private organizations bringing food. I went there to do some nursing. They said, we got enough nurses, but you can be a gopher. So I was a gopher ferrying food. Neil Richardson, the Department of Public Health nurses, hadn't had anything to eat. Called Neil Richardson. At the Safe House, they provided food. I went and picked it up, brought it to them, and New Horizons came out. I mean, this community is just awesome when it comes to closing ranks and just helping. I mean, just spontaneous, and that's what makes this community just so awesome. The earthy people that are will give up their time, private citizens, like you mentioned, donating things, and it just gives you goosebumps when you realize, with all that's said, when you can read in the papers, the setting views, how this community pulls together and just gives of itself. It's just an awesome community, just in a nutshell.
Yeah. And the medical center sent a portable and a tractor trailer, a portable clinic, and set it up, and we had doctors. Attending, but we had the Mercer medical students were there doing 12-hour shifts, seeing patients, and we had people, mental health, we had a mental health ward set up, and Unbelievable. A little pharmacy and
It was awesome.
nurses. Anyway, okay, Lisa, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Well, with that, of course, you know that what we typically do whenever we have a storm of this magnitude, and with Tropical Storm Irma, it did some damage in terms of trees. You have the list. We had, between yesterday and today, over 203 calls for downed trees in our community. Had about 9 calls for flooding. And then, of course, some with the street lights out and some other things. But, of course, what we typically do when this happens, we issue a moratorium on our tree for fee service. It's typically 30 days that we do where you can put those trees out that have been down without paying any kind of fee. We will do that through Friday, October the 13th, which is 30 days. And then if we see, of course, that more time is needed, then of course the city manager will make that call if we determine that more time is needed. But right now, it's Friday, October the 13th. You're able to put all of that debris, limbs, trees, but of course what we need for you to do is to make sure that you cut them in 4-foot sections, because we're only able to pick up certain sizes. So it needs to be cut in 4-foot sections, and then, of course, it needs to be placed on the curb. We will not come onto private property and pick up. So make sure that it's placed at the curb. It's not placed, if at all possible, near your mailbox or power lines and things like that, because we do have, utilities that are still doing some cleanup work and some other things, and they need to be able to get to their utilities in order to make that happen. So just make sure that, not close to any water meters, electrical boxes, or anything like that, but on the curb in 4-foot sections, and we will go ahead and get started on that. Crews have been out since yesterday cleaning up. They're continuing to do so, and so you will continue to see them out there. We do ask for patience as we continue to go about making, these cleanup efforts. It's going to take us some time to get everything cleared up. Do want to just also mention that the Monday trash service will be picked up on tomorrow, on Wednesday. So if your trash is typically picked up on Monday, it will be picked up on Wednesday. Today's service, Tuesday, was picked up today for those, had Tuesday service. And then, of course, we will resume normal service on Thursday. Okay? Any questions?
Okay, we've got Counselor Thomas.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you send this to us? I'd like to put this on several social media pages that I deal with. And so would you send this to us in an email so we can do that?
We'll do that.
And I do want to thank 311 and all of the work that those folks did the last several days with this. And I had a request from a citizen, and I'm going to pass it along, and you can do with it as you wish. Her trash is typically picked up on Monday. And she said, I saw the notice that said you were going to pick up trash on Monday, but there was a garbage truck in my neighborhood today. And I said, well, that may have been somebody picking up yard waste. She said, well, put a big sign on the side of it and say yard waste so that I won't think I've missed my garbage. So if you have time, put a sign on those trucks, will you?
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Woodson.
Lisa, I had a question for you because when I was in the community, somebody made the question to me, what are we doing with all this wood? Because what are we doing with all this wood, these tree limbs that we're picking up?
We take it to our inner landfill.
And just,
and we mulch it and
mulch
we use it.
Okay, because someone was asking me if there was a way they can purchase it, and I said, I don't know.
We give it away.
You give it away?
Mulch.
Okay,
We give it
all
away.
right, because they asked me, I
Come
said,
get as much
I
as you
don't
want.
know. I have to find out and come back and tell you. Now, there's one street here missing, and that's the one of this morning. I'll give it to you.
Okay.
And then you can add it on this list.
Okay.
And they came out this morning, everybody was out there. Georgia Power, the gas company, everyone did. And they did an awesome job, because there was a lot of wires down this morning. It was really dangerous. It really was.
Yes.
But they are all out there, every single one, the constituents in that little area that affected was very happy. I mean, yeah, they're a little upset a little bit because, I guess the box or something destroyed, and it's going to take a couple days before they can really get power. But they were very excited to see everybody out there, and it was all taken care of.
Good.
So thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay, we've got Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and my fellow colleagues, Ms. City Manager. I think this is just great in how how our community comes together, and it's not just here. We shouldn't forget what happened with Harvey coming in as well, but how our community, both in the whether government, whether private sector, whether corporate sector, our own citizens, how they've helped and contributed in so many ways. There's no way I can at this point acknowledge all of them, but we don't have a resolution. We don't have a proclamation. I know certainly we all have expressed our gratitude. The mayor's led us along the way, and we've all helped in our own way and in some form of shape of capacity, but I think it'd be just very appropriate. I mean, we're not going to meet again, Madam Mayor, for a while, but if you just lead us, and let's just give a salute and a standing ovation to all those who contributed. I think it would be very appropriate at this time that that would be the least that we could do.
All right, let's do that. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, again, thank you all, and if you do have someone special, we, of course, have got the Parks and Rec, the law enforcement, all the folks we've mentioned today, but if somebody comes to mind, you want to make sure we get a proclamation for them, the organization, the work they did, just shoot me an email, and we'll make sure we get that proclamation, and we'll have a major part of our proclamation session in October will be devoted to those who helped in this great effort responding to Irma. Mr. City Manager, did you have anything else? And Madam Clerk, I think we're carrying over your agenda to next time, so thank you. All right, that concludes our business. We've got Councilor Woodson with additional comment.
I just want to invite everyone, my fellow council members and everyone, to the Tri-City Latino Festival. It will still be on Saturday from 12 to 10 p.m. It's a free entrance, just no coolers. Come and enjoy a good time with your family, especially after everything we've been through these past few weeks. The music is both in English and in Spanish. At the end, there'll be some fireworks to celebrate its 5th anniversary. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. It's always a great, great time. Let's see here. We got Councilor Barnes.
Applications for the Veterans Day Parade. It's online, city website, Phoenix City Parks and Recs, here at the Citizen Service Center. And Mr. City Manager, there's a gentleman, Rainwater, I think I have a faulty memory, last name Watts. There was a gentleman on Fernwood Avenue, had a huge problem with water. He called me, and he's going to contact engineering, because it's really an engineering problem. But the fact that he went out there, got with the citizen, I think he needs to get an attaboy. I think his last name is Watts now. I'm not too sure. It is Watts? Okay. He took this step to go out there and talk to the citizen, Mr. Calhoun, but he resolved the problem. So I think he needs to get a call and, is that correct, Watts? Attaboy for that extra step that he took.
All right, great. Well, that does conclude our business. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And a second. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. All right, we're adjourned until next time. Thank you all.